Hey everyone, we are so glad that you are joining us for another installment of our Q&A. Basically during this time, my name's Josh, by the way, and this is Dave, he's the lead pastor. We're going to be diving into questions that you guys have submitted through our Submit a Question tab on our website, which is my3c.org. These questions can be about the message we just had, anything we've gone through in this series, or just any questions at all, and we have a good mix of those today.
We have a good mix. That's been the theme, hasn't it, for the last few weeks?
We have a good mix, so we're going to be tackling everything. As always, we say this every time. If we finish this whole thing and you're like, oh, my question isn't there, or that's not exactly what I was asking, if you can just ask it again and kind of just clarify, or if for some reason your question wasn't here, if you can just re-put it. Sometimes there's technical difficulties, so we just want to be able to bypass that and make sure that your question gets answered. So, Dave, how are you doing today?
You know, I'm doing well. It's November 1st, Josh.
It is November
and we've
1st.
already had our first snowstorm.
Yeah.
Snowfall, let's be honest.
Yeah, I'm already over it. So, but I'm from South Carolina and didn't get snow. And
in a sense, I'm from South Carolina too.
You are from South Carolina.
That's right. I spent many years living there, but way upstate, unlike you.
I was coast. I was 3 minutes from the beach my entire life. So
I was about 4 hours from the beach. So yeah.
Yep, you're in the mountains of Greenville.
Yep, that's
beautiful
right.
Beautiful space. Beautiful area. Right. Very beautiful area.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I'm actually closer to a beach where I live now than when I lived in South Carolina.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yep, about an hour.
That would make sense.
To Lake Michigan.
All righty. So, Dave, you should know the question that's coming.
Can I guess? Are you going to ask me to give a brief synopsis of the message from Sunday?
Yes, but actually, we're going to take a time out.
What?
Because you're going to do that after we answer this first question.
Oh, okay.
Because this first question is like a good warm-up question.
A twist, all right.
So we're going to answer that one after this
Okay,
first
cool.
one. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this one. Do you have an apologetics course you would recommend? Now, first, before you recommend that, what does apologetics mean?
Great question. Because when you see that word, all of us would naturally go apologetics, apology, like I'm sorry, sort of a thing. Actually, the word apologetics is a transliteration of a Greek word. In other words, rather than being translated, they just said the same thing in one language that it sounded like in another. And it basically means a reasoned defense. Mm-hmm. So the idea behind apologetics is giving reasons why we believe the things that we do. So that's what apologetics refers to. So accusations about Christianity, the Bible, theism, it answers those particular accusations or objections, and then gives reasons why it is that we do believe the things we do. Short answer. Thank you. Kind of short answer.
Thank you for tackling that, because whenever I was in middle school and high school and I would see that word, I just thought, I'm sorry? What am I sorry
Yes,
for?
that's natural.
Like, what is this weird apology word that has ethics at the end of it? So I could imagine there were some people out there that probably were thinking the same thing that I used to think.
For sure.
So we had to clarify that one before we dive in. So do you have any of these apologetics Christian defense courses?
Yeah, and
recommend?
I'm going to make an assumption here. And the assumption I'm going to make is that this person probably isn't looking to like leave and enroll in college and get right, because there are certainly great places that you can go to do that kind of thing. But if you wanted to go, I just want to learn more about it. I want somebody to walk me through the basics. A few that I have found that I thought were, free, because I'm also assuming, free is better than paid, right? So ones that are actually free that do a really good job of walking you through the basics. The C.S. Lewis Institute. That's the initials C.S. and then the last word Lewis. Very famous Christian apologist from a generation ago. The C.S. Lewis Institute offers a free online apologetics course, which is really good in walking you through all the basics. Apologetics Press. So apologetics, the very word you see up there, press, also offers a free online course. And the way theirs is kind of outlined, there's 3 levels. There are 10 lessons in each level. And the idea behind it is you go through the first level, make sure you've assimilated the information, then you go on to a more advanced level. And that's free, really good stuff. Then I recently discovered something by the Christian Leaders Institute. All right, Christian Leaders Institute. And after you enroll, and it's free to get an account and to enroll, they also offer a video apologetics course with downloadable study guides that go along with it. Those would be 3 excellent online courses that cost you no money. You could do at your own pace.
Yeah, I got another one to add to that.
Please.
Because I think that some people in our church can forget that we have this resource. It's called Right Now Media.
Oh, good. Like some people like me.
I love Right Now Media. I use it at least.
That is such a good point,
once or twice a week. But if you go on there, they have Bible studies about, literally any topic that you could think of, from people like Matt Chandler, Albert Tate, Sadie Robertson Huff. Just a lot of great people, Jackie Hill Perry. But then also, if you scroll through there, they have an entire tab called Apologetics, and you can just scroll through there. Some of my favorite ones on there are where they take Bible verses out, and they go, oh, people say that this disproves this about the Bible. Well, let's actually really talk about what this verse means all of the context around it. So Right Now Media is free. All you got to do is sign up.
How do you get it, Josh?
You can get Right Now Media by emailing Perry Hostetler and getting a link, because I'm not sure the other way to do it. Or you can
that is the way, because we pay for it so that anybody in the orbit of connections can get it for free.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe we can even get Steve's over there. I'll send Steve after this. I'm going to text you the link so that you can put it in the Facebook chat during the live stream.
There we go.
He's giving me a thumbs up. So there should be a link at some point popping up where you can click that and you can make a free account on Right Now Media. It's incredible. I really encourage you to do that along with the stuff that you recommend.
That's excellent resource, Josh.
Yeah, awesome. All right, now we're going to go to the question.
Okay.
In a brief 1-2 minute synopsis, what did we talk about this past Sunday, in case somebody hasn't gotten the chance to watch
Absolutely.
it yet?
So we tackled the question, is Christianity at odds with science? When you listen to many people speak, particularly in the scientific community and educational community, it's as though science is all about facts and reasons, and Christianity is about blind faith and superstition. Yeah. When the reality is neither of those is true. Reasonable faith is the basis of operation for both Christianity and science. So we operate from the same basis, reasonable faith. What we then did is we said, okay, why are there these accusations? Yeah. And one reason that the Bible and Christianity is accused of being unscientific is just due to a gross misunderstanding what the Bible actually says. You just mentioned it. Those verses that are meant that people say mean one thing, actually, when you understand them in context, they mean something different.
Absolutely.
But there are some major contradictions, and those aren't factual matters, they're philosophical matters. In other words, the worldview influence what's inferred from data everybody agrees on. So we walked through 3 in particular. We talked about the everybody agrees on the beginning of the universe. But what do you infer from that differs hugely, whether you're a theist or a naturalist. Then we talked about the fine-tuning of that universe to support life. Went through the same thing. And then we talked about how did humans come to be as developed as they are. Yeah. And we talked about evolution versus creation. So we walked through those particular matters to demonstrate that Christianity and science are actually allies. We're allies because we operate on the same basis, reasonable faith. We agree on the facts, even though we differ on the inference from those facts. And then lastly, we spent a little time, I wish I would have spent more time, on how both science and Christianity help us understand God. All of nature is there as a demonstration to all who would investigate it as to what God is actually like. It's beautiful and powerful. And Christianity explains things that science never could about God, like why are we here? What's the purpose of our life? Yeah. Where are we going? So they actually complement each other perfectly. That's the synopsis of the message. I heard something.
Total side note, that was definitely Perry Hostetler somewhere outside that door,
oh my
just
gosh.
like screaming. I don't know.
Maybe Michigan just got put on probation.
Yeah,
for their
maybe
scandals.
they finally got caught cheating, and he's mad. He's a big Michigan fan, by the way.
For sure.
I don't know. Normally he shuts the door so we don't hear him, but maybe he
know.
didn't shut the door today because he
Yeah.
just screamed so.
Maybe
loud.
it was a worship scream. Maybe he's so into his devotions today that
Maybe that would be a very interesting thing to do,
That
but
would be.
maybe. All right. Sorry for distracting everybody. Perry, when you're watching this, you can put in the comments why you screamed
Please
like that.
do. It's a mystery.
We're very curious. All right. This is a fun question. I feel like this could be one of my youth students that asked this question.
oh no,
because
well this will be good then.
they're just obsessed with this topic.
Okay.
And we've talked about it so many times, I feel like. Are dinosaurs mentioned in the Bible? Roar.
It's a classic question, right? I mean, dinosaurs are a big deal. I mean, my grandkids are all running around playing with dinosaurs, dinosaur T-shirts on. It's a super big deal, right? The answer to the question is, yep, they certainly are.
All right, there we go. Move on. We're done.
There are three terms in particular that the overwhelming consensus is they refer to dinosaurs.
Yeah.
One term is translated behemoth. It's found in Job chapter 40, as a for instance. And there's a description of that particular animal there, and it sounds exactly like a brontosaurus or brontosaurus-like creature. You should read it. Job 40, middle 15 through 17, right around in there. Then in Job 41, it refers to a totally different one called the Leviathan.
Yep.
And then there's a very interesting word found a couple of times. It's usually translated sea monster. Psalm 74 contains this particular word, which also was some aquatic dinosaur-like creature. So are they mentioned in the Bible? They absolutely are. Christians, Bible believers, don't go, there's no such thing as dinosaurs. Because most clearly, the fossil evidence is there absolutely were dinosaurs. Yep. Now, if there were dinosaurs, they were created by God when he created the earth and everything on it and in it, right? And there would have been dinosaurs on the ark. There would have had to have been. That means that humans and dinosaurs coexisted, which naturalistic science says not a chance. From what I read, they say there's about a 45 million year gap between dinosaurs and the first human beings. But the Bible would say they coexisted. And what's fascinating, and I remember hearing about this first when I was like middle school maybe, there's a place in Texas called Dinosaur Valley, and it's called that because there are all these dinosaur footprints, which has become fossilized. And what was fascinating is they found several dinosaur footprints with human footprints fossilized inside the dinosaur footprints, which is just fascinating because it is archaeological fossil evidence that humans and dinosaurs existed at the same time.
Yeah. Yep. And this is one of those questions where we don't know exactly when all of this happened within the Bible because it's not clear, but it doesn't change our faith in Jesus.
Oh, it doesn't. It doesn't change this at all. And there's also no like, oh my goodness, smoking gun contradiction. No dinosaurs in the Bible. Clearly there were dinosaurs. The Bible got it wrong. It's like not even close to correct. Yeah.
So another question my youth students had that I think is really funny. Did Jesus ride a dinosaur?
Here's how I'm going to answer that question, Josh. If he wanted to, he could have.
Absolutely. He absolutely could have. So there we go, everybody. These are some of the questions we get in youth group because we're not afraid of questions in our youth group either. And they just choose to ask about dinosaurs a lot. So
that's good.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. All right, let's move on. We just touched a little bit on scientists saying that there was 45 million years or so between the dinosaurs and the humans. So let's dive into more of, I'm hitting my mic, more of that realm. Okay. This person said, I've heard that the Bible says the earth is only about 6,000 years old, but science has proven that the earth is billions of years old. How can you resolve this conflict?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And both are correct. The most common scientific conclusion on the age of the Earth is like 4.5 billion years old. And there are many 7-day, as in literal creationists, that say the Earth is somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 years old. So the numbers are pretty much right on target there. Let's just all exercise a little humility to begin with and go, nobody knows for sure how old the Earth is. Your guesstimation, your determination is going to be based off of assumptions and the criteria that you use in order to attempt to date how old the Earth is. Mm-hmm. From the reading that I have done, there are two primary ways that the Earth is dated through scientific means. One is to measure the isotropic decay in rocks. So like the atoms in a rock are going to break down at a predictable rate over the course of time. So given the level of the degree to which the atom has broken down, they can determine how old that rock is. The oldest rocks actually were discovered in Canada, interestingly enough, and they were dated a little more than 4 billion years ago. The second way that they do dating is, and I remember this from high school so well, carbon-14 dating. The thing about carbon-14 dating is that it also deals with degradation of atomic molecules, but there are some unique ones, carbon-14, in living organisms that have died. And because the decay rate is consistent, they can see how much these particular carbon-14 atoms have eroded or degraded, and then come up with how long ago that creature would have died or that plant would have died. The limitation of carbon-14 is that after about 50,000 years, it's zero. So it can only go back like that far. Mm-hmm. So those are the two primary means that science uses of dating how old things are. Both of them make assumptions. One is that there was a universal starting point with all rock and all living organisms. And second, that the decay rate has always been consistent. So both the starting point and the decay rate are assumed to be a certain set, and therefore they make their calculations. What's interesting is I read that even naturalistic scientists make allowances for a sped up rate of atoms degrading based off what they termed as localized catastrophic events. And what I find fascinating about that is that as believers in Scripture, there was at least one universal catastrophic event called the flood, which would have had a dramatic impact on speeding up, if you will, the atoms decaying that are used to kind of develop how old these particular things are. So they recognize that that's a possibility, and we would hold that there was one that was actually universal in nature, which would have impacted everything. The creationist comes up with 6,000 years or 8,000 years based on genealogies in the Bible. The Bible, if you've not noticed, has a ton of genealogy. Yep. Right? So this person, had this person as a kid, and that person, and then on and on and on.
First Chronicles, Second Chronicles, what is it? The end of Matthew 1, Matthew 2.
Exactly right. Like First Chronicles, which is it's like a different perspective on the book of First and Second Kings, right? And it emphasizes the history of Judah, one of the tribes of one of the half of Israel after they split as a nation. And like the first, 9 chapters are all... Yeah, it's like...
I don't know. I've been going through the Bible in your chronological order, and I feel like every single day there's something from Chronicles with the genealogy, and I'm just like, man, it's all ties in.
is just exactly right.
But could you imagine being that person just writing down, and this person is from this person, and this person is from this person, and this person is from this person?
God would
for
never give
9
me that
chapters.
job. God would
Oh
never
my
give me
God.
that job. Yep. Because I would just go and you get the picture and then just move on. But by taking the genealogies, they conjecture back to Adam and Eve and a starting point in that 6,000-ish, 8,000 years, right in that area right there. So you can imagine the discrepancy between 6,000 years and 4.5 billion years is pretty big. And the scientific community will often ridicule the creationist, what they call young earth view, because it's a given that their dating methods are accurate. And I think this might be a bigger factor, Josh. I'm inferring something here. In order for the theory of evolution to be at all plausible, you've got to have billions of years.
For sure. And
so it's very important for their worldview that particular dating has been kept in there. It's interesting that when it comes for the accounting of the age of the earth, you can hold to a biblical creationist view, a young earth view, and still account for time. Yeah. And here are some ways that you could do it. One is that the creation account in Genesis 1 and then some degree repeated in 2. If you take that literally, which I do at face value, then that means everything was created with the appearance of age. Yeah. If you saw Adam on day 2, he would not look like a 2-day-old baby. Yep. He would look like a full-grown man, right? Yep. The same thing, if you saw an oak tree on day 2, it wouldn't look like it was still a seed in the ground or a seedling. Well, it would be like this huge tree.
I mean, one of the big things from that is if they had to eat and they were eating from the fruit in the garden.
Good point, Josh.
Baby trees, on day 2.
On day 2.
Yep. They aren't going to be producing fruit if they're starting from the baby form to be able to.
Excellent point. Excellent point. So it was created with the appearance of age. We have at least acknowledged that. Yep. What is also true is that they have demonstrated that some things that naturalistic science says takes hundreds of thousands of years or millions of years to happen actually can happen in a far shorter period of time under the right conditions, such as the formation of coal and oil, the formation of sedimentary rock, which is where we get fossils from. Yep. It's actually been demonstrated these things happen in a much shorter period of time than the normal conclusion of it takes millions of years for these to happen. But there's another very interesting theory, and it's usually called the gap theory. Mm-hmm. What the gap theory does is says that there is an unspecified but possibly very large period of time between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and the Spirit of God hovers on the face of the waters. And I just slapped my leg for reasons I have no idea. But anyway, it's kind of like Perry's scream. Genesis 1 verse 2 says, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, and the evening and the morning were the first day. So there are many who say that God spoke the universe into existence or created the universe in Genesis 1:1. Then you have an unspecified period of time, and then God began forming what he created. When it says in Genesis 1 that the earth was without form and void, it was literally unformed. It was like this blob, and it was unfilled. And these 6 days of creation account for God forming and filling the earth. It is a legitimate interpretation. And I know many committed theist, Bible-believing people that hold the gap theory, and others that go, nope, I think Genesis 1:1 and 1:2 ought to be taken together. But if there is a gap in there, and we don't know how long that gap could be, that could also account for the age of some of the things that we see. So there are ways to harmonize the theory on one hand that the earth is very, very old, and the theory on the other hand that the earth is very, very young. There are ways to harmonize them. Yeah,
absolutely. Let's dive into evolution. Let's continue.
Why not?
Let's continue to go off of it. All these questions partner really well together.
Okay.
Is it possible that God used evolution to create people? Can you believe the Bible and believe in evolution? This is a good question. This is a very popular, very frequently asked question in today's world.
It is. You're right, Josh. So the name for combining evolution and creation is called theistic evolution. Mm-hmm. Theistic evolution, in essence, says, let me back up. Theistic evolution looks at Genesis 1 and 2 more as poetry than history. Now, they believe it's inspired poetry, but it's not to be taken at face value the same way that historical narrative is to be taken. And so they look at, day as being an age or period of time. And that the first day you have simple life forms, right? Or second day you have simple life forms, or third day you have simple life forms. And then the life forms become increasingly complex until the last age, if you will. You finally see animals, and then you see human beings at last of all. And so what they will do is that it is a theistic evolutionist will say, God created everything, but then used evolution. It's often called guided evolution. That God then superintended over the process of evolution to get everything to where he wanted it to be. That is a synopsis of what theistic evolution is. Now, I think it's really important to understand that the big gap in viewpoints is not between a 7-day creationist and a theistic evolutionist. Because both of them believe God created everything, and it's God who is the one that got every living thing to where it is now. So so there's a disagreement on how that happened, but not what happened. Yeah. A naturalist who sees no God in the equation, nothing supernatural, that all matter and all life evolved via scientific laws. That there's a huge gap between that and literal 7-day creationism, theistic evolution. That's where the big gap is. So the theistic evolution question is almost like a family debate. We believe God's responsible for it all, but how did that work itself out? And it all came about by time and chance and by the laws of science, which technically are impossible, but that's where the big gap is. So, is it possible to believe that God used evolution to create people, that you can harmonize the two? Yeah, there is a way. That's what theistic evolution does. But there are certain problems with evolution itself, even if you take a God-guided view of it, that in my view make it too problematic to embrace as the way God did it. Yeah. So I look at it and I go, first of all, there are some scientific reasons why I find it implausible. The first is the fossil record. Okay? The fossil record does not support a gradual evolution of life. In fact, there's a book called Theistic Evolution, and the subtitle is like a scientific, philosophical, and theological critique. I believe that's the full name of it. It is a massive book intended to be a college textbook. Yep. And it was edited by a number of scholars from all sorts of fields. And this is the result of what they've said. So I'm giving a uber synopsis of what they said. Fossil record does not support a gradual change of life. Rather, it shows a spontaneous eruption of life, and not just the Precambrian explosion that you sometimes hear about in science, but all of it. It does not support the fossil record does not support a common universal ancestry.
Yeah.
You can't trace things back doing that. They've also demonstrated in that book that DNA mutations cannot account for evolution into a new species. They've also demonstrated in that book that natural selection cannot account for a change of species. For instance, here's what I was taught in high school. It's like you had this moth and like they're all white, but then the environment changed and then all of a sudden there were a few brown, but now they're all brown, and that's natural selection and change over time. Except it was still a moth.
Yep.
There is zero evidence for one species turning into another. We can breed flowers. We can breed dogs. But no matter how many breeds we come up with, they're still all flowers and they're still all dogs. So a trans-species evolution is there's just no documentation for it. So those are just scientific reasons why I find theistic evolution to be implausible. But there are also some theological considerations that we need to take into account before coming to our own reasoned conclusion. One is that Genesis 1 and 2 are not written like Hebrew poetry.
Yeah.
Hebrew poetry is weird. We think of poetry as rhyming, but in Hebrew poetry, it was all about symmetry or balance but between the two. And those elements of poetry are not in Genesis 1 and chapter 2. The things that are sometimes stated as being poetic are the same kind of elements found in the book of Acts.
Yeah.
Nobody says Acts is poetry, but rather Genesis 1 is written in a way to make it memorable, but it's written as historical narrative. So that's one. Second, the word day. The Hebrew word translated day is the word yom, like Y-O-M is the transliteration that most people use that word. And the word yom has its literal meaning, a 24-hour period of time. Yes, sometimes it's used for an age. But when it is, there's a qualifier. Like in the day of Elijah or the day of the Lord, there's a qualifier of some sort. And when we read the word yom in Genesis chapter 1, it also says, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Well, an evening and a morning is a day, right? So the indication would be pretty strongly, I think, that yom as it's used in Hebrews chapter 1 refers to a 24-hour period of time. Another theological consideration that I think needs to be worked through before coming to your own reasoned conclusion is that God says that human beings were a unique creation of his, that they didn't have any predecessors. Now, if they did have predecessors, at what point did along the way of primates into a human being, at what point was it like, okay, that baby is no longer a primate, it's now a human being? When did the human being get a soul? When did the human being become the image of God? Because if it's just generation after generation, when did it evolve to the place that God goes, oh, right there. Parent, not human. Kid, human. Parent, no soul. Kid, soul. I mean, that's a very profound question. Yeah. At what point did this creature become a human being with a soul who became morally responsible, who could be given commands, and that God would walk with that person? Yeah. I don't see a way, personally, in an evolutionary scheme where you can have a moment where suddenly that transpires. So I can't be dogmatic about any of that, but those are some very serious things that we need to wrestle with before coming to a theistic evolutionist or literal seven-day creationist viewpoint on how did God bring all that is into the state where it is right now.
Absolutely. Thank you for diving into that. And again, this is also another one of those topics where if we have it wrong, or if somebody listening has it wrong, it's not going to keep you out of heaven if you believe in Jesus. So like that is one of the things that we can so easily get caught up in, is that, oh, if I don't have this exact right view on if it's 7 days or millions of billions of years or any of that I'm not going to go into heaven. Well, no, at the end of the day, it's not going to keep you out of heaven. As long as you believe in Jesus, that's where you're going.
And Josh, I love how you keep bringing us back to that perspective, because it is so critical in all of these issues that we talk about. That no one needs to be at a place where before I can receive Jesus or commit my life to him, I need to be in agreement on what I think the Bible teaches everywhere.
Yeah.
It's come to a reasoned conclusion on who Jesus is,
Yeah.
and the veracity of what he has done and claims to be able to do for you.
Yeah.
Once a person comes into that personal relationship with Jesus and is saved, born again, made new, right? All of these wonderful metaphors in the Bible for having that happen. Then you learn and you grow along the way.
Yep.
And there is nothing anywhere close to having the same value or impact than deciding who is Jesus and is what he said and did actually true to the place I can commit my life to him.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite sayings. It's something everybody says it just a little bit different. But God tells us to come as we are, but when we fully submit to him, he doesn't leave us as we are.
Whoa, that is spot on.
When we fully open ourselves to God, he is going to turn us and form us and refine us and mold us into the person that he wants us to be. Which dives right into our next question.
Perry should scream to that, because that was scream-worthy
right
there.
Perry. All right, next question. Now we're going to kind of go out of the stuff from this Sunday. We're going to dive into some questions from the previous. There we go. That's where I couldn't think of the word. The previous messages within this series, and this kind of ties into what we did on Sunday, but one of our songs.
Okay.
How do you defend singing a song about coming as you are when you will not allow LGBTQ people to come as they are and serve in a ministry to give back to God? So what I'm going to assume, I think this is a fair assumption, is that this person is referring to a question that I believe we did last week on if somebody who is LGBTQ can serve in kids ministry or greeting or worship ministry or youth ministry, elders, deacons, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I believe that this question is referring to for everybody that's listening.
That makes sense. So, boy, you had a good segue there. You said "come as you are," and there it is, right there.
It wasn't even planned.
I
totally really forgot that question even mentions that.
That was good. So, two issues that I see as I look at the question, and let me address each one. Yeah. The first one is, let's talk about come as they are, come as you are. We are a come as you are church. Mm-hmm. Here's what we mean by that. And that is anybody and everybody is welcome to come to Connections. And when you do, you are going to be accepted, you are going to be respected, and you're going to be valued. That's what that means. And the reason that we believe deeply that we need to be a church like that is because coming as you are is the only way you can come to Jesus. We don't clean ourselves up to come to Jesus. We don't improve our lives and get good enough to come to Jesus, because we can never clean ourselves up enough, and we can never be good enough to ever be able to come to Jesus and have a relationship with him.
Yeah.
It's impossible. I grew up and heard in various churches that we would at least occasionally attend that you had to accept Jesus as your Savior to go to heaven. And I can remember many times as a kid, middle schooler, high schooler, laying in bed at night, and I'm laying there and I am feeling guilty, Josh, for very justifiable reasons, things that I have done. And I can remember so many times, Josh, so many times, dozens and dozens of times, going, all right, I'm guilty. I know it. There's no way I'm going to heaven. So here's what I would do. I would go, I accept Jesus into my heart as my Savior, and I promise I'm going to be better from now on. And what I realize now is that I was somehow believing that I had to do this like ask Jesus in thing and be a better person in order to be saved and be forgiven. Well, very shortly the next day, usually before breakfast, I would sin again, and I would go, I must not have meant it. It wasn't until I was a teenager, I was in high school, and I was in the evening service of a church, and I don't remember what the pastor was preaching on, but I came under intense conviction that I was indeed guilty. I was indeed cut off from relationship with God because I was, and I was going to go to hell. Whatever hell was, I was going there.
Yeah.
And that there wasn't one thing I could do about it. Yep. And in that desperation, I just cried out in my heart. I didn't say words out loud. God save me. Mm-hmm. And he did. Because in that moment, I came to him as I was in my guilt and my brokenness and my helpfulness. And I cried out for salvation. And at that point, it's exactly what he did. He saved me. And it's what he does to anyone who comes as they are. But coming as you are to Jesus means we acknowledge we are broken, sinful people, deserving of judgment, who have forfeited a relationship with God, and we need him to rescue us from that so we can be forgiven and be reconciled back into a relationship with God and be able to spend forever with him. Yeah. So we want to be a Come As You Are church for that very reason. Now, we want people to come as they are to us because they need to come as they are to Jesus. But you said something, Josh, earlier, which is so profound. When we do come to Jesus, that begins a process of transformation. Mm-hmm. When we come to Jesus, it's not he who changes, it's we who change. And that means that our brokenness begins to be healed. Our sinfulness begins to be corrected because we have the Spirit of Jesus in us. We have the Word of Jesus to guide us. We have Christians around us to support us. And we go through the process of transformation and change. One of the ways that change happens is in the sexual ethic. It's just one of the ways, but there are many ways. So it means that we are going to teach in our church everything that God is, does, says, expects, promises. And that means we're going to learn what his sexual ethic are, because only by conforming to it are we going to flourish as human beings. It's the only way. Living outside of God's sexual ethic is the route of diminishment and destruction. It is unhealthy for any human being. And God loves people, so he doesn't want that to happen to them. And that doesn't matter whether you're sleeping around. That doesn't matter whether you're cheating on your spouse, and it doesn't matter whether you're engaging in same-sex sexual relationships. All of them are outside of God's sexual ethic, and he will lead us out of those practices into healthy ones. Yeah. We are a safe place where people can come as they are, where they hear a message that we pray will convict, convince, enlighten, and draw people so that they will repent of sin, they will believe on Jesus, and begin the transformation process. If we're a church where people come as they are and they stay that way, we are unfaithful to Jesus. We're just unfaithful to Jesus. Yep. So we need to understand that about what come as you are means. Second, about serving. As you mentioned in your synopsis, what I did not say in the Q&A last week is that openly LGBTQIA plus people, because I believe that's how the question was phrased, couldn't serve. I said they can't be in any position of leadership or influence. And we are not singling out that community by saying that. Because what we said and what is just true, so this, I'm really grateful for the chance to clarify. No one is going to be placed into a position where you automatically have influence or where you are a leader until you have grown to the place that you have a sufficient level of Christian maturity and can be entrusted with influence. Basic level Christian maturity. There are places like 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 9 through 11. And it says, and this is not an exact quote, but this is representative of what it says there. So check it out. That's the reference. Where the Spirit of Jesus is speaking through Paul and says that there are certain kinds of people who practice certain kinds of sins that will not inherit the kingdom of God. Now, that's sobering, but we need to wrestle with this. Now, what he's saying is not that there are Christians who are perfect. What he's saying is there are lifestyles that are utterly incompatible with Christianity. And if you're practicing it, you need to really make sure that you need to question whether or not you've actually been born again. And then you've got this list of things. And on that list of things, it includes things like immoral people, adulterers, greedy people, swindlers, liars, thieves, people who have sex with people of their own gender. They're all put on that list. Mm-hmm. And what we're being taught there is there are certain lifestyles that are utterly incompatible with basic Christian living. That if you practice that lifestyle, there's a reason to question if you've really been born again. And if you are, then follow the teachings of Jesus and abandon those lifestyles and adopt the healthy moral ethic that Jesus gave to all people who would follow him. So we don't single out the LGBTQIA plus community. This is true of everybody. Yep. You don't show up at Connections or any Christian church one day and then you're given a position of influence the second day. It doesn't happen. It's like there needs to be time where you demonstrate the fruit of salvation, that you exhibit at least a basic level of conformity to a standard Christian lifestyle so you can be entrusted with influence. Yeah. Jesus said through his Spirit, through the Apostle Paul, in 1 Timothy chapter 3, Titus chapter 1, that if you want to be a leader, there are certain character traits, there are certain understanding thresholds that you've got to comply to if you're ever going to serve in that capacity. Right. And it is, Josh, it is unloving for any church not to teach people Jesus, the lifestyle that Jesus commands us to live, including the sexual ethic. It is unloving not to teach it. It is unloving not to expect it. And it is unloving not to require it of anybody that's going to serve in a position of influence or leadership. The harm done to the person and the harm done to those they influence or lead is significant, which is why Jesus says, don't do it. Yeah. So that's what I said last week, and I appreciate the opportunity to clarify that we're talking about people that are given positions of influence and leadership, and LGBTQIA plus is not being singled out. Everybody has to have a basic conformity to a Christian lifestyle to be given any position like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure, absolutely.
On that question. Let's go ahead and let's dive into our last question for today. How is IVF ethical if they are creating multiple zygotes per couple? If these zygotes are not used, they are either indefinitely frozen or destroyed/killed. I think it's a good advancement in science as people that might not necessarily be able to get pregnant naturally can now. However, when we're talking about preborn lives being taken, it makes me wonder the ethics of it all. First, what is IVF? In case anybody doesn't know.
In vitro fertilization.
And what does that mean?
It is bringing an egg and sperm into union outside of the womb in a laboratory in a petri dish. Sometimes the way it's, I don't know that that's necessarily it, but it's literally when egg and sperm are united outside the womb. And then after a certain amount of cellular development, right, at conception, it's a zygote.
Yeah.
So it's one cell with the entire separate, distinct DNA, which is the map that the entire living human person unfolds as. And then it goes through cellular development. And at some point, it would then be implanted into the uterus where it does the vast majority of its development. That's IVF. So
I was looking at you. I'm like, did you forget the rest of the question?
This person has reasoned through this issue really well.
Yes.
Really well. To make sure that we always keep the big picture in view, at the time of conception, where you have a zygote with the complete DNA of a human being, you have a living human person, and the termination of the life of a living human person who has human rights that must be protected, that ending that without just cause is immoral. It's unethical. The way in vitro fertilization is normally done, and again, I'm familiar with this from personal experience, not only my wife and I, but very, very close, is that it's an expensive process. So what normally happens is a number of eggs are harvested or sometimes donated. Sperm is harvested or sometimes donated because it's a matter of whether is it the married couple or is there a donor sperm or egg. That sometimes happens as well. But a number of them are harvested. Sounds like a horrible word. But then a number of them are allowed to fertilize and become zygotes. Then usually a few of them are implanted and the rest are stored cryogenically. They're frozen so that they are still alive, right? And the reason that that's done is that if the embryos don't develop and there's like a spontaneous abortion, miscarriage, whatever, there's a problem, they can go back and unthaw some of the embryos and implant them again without having to go through that whole repeated process. An IVF cycle, from the last I read, was about $30,000 per cycle. So it's not an inexpensive procedure, right? Those frozen embryos are living human persons with human rights.
Yeah.
To destroy them, and I love the way this person read, destroy/killed, because that is what's happening. If they're destroyed, you are terminating the life of a living human person, is what's going on there. So how could you do IVF in an ethical way, a God-honoring, moral way? There seems to be two ways that can be done. One is only fertilize eggs that are going to be implanted. That increases the likelihood that you will have to repeat this process, which means the cost goes up. But at least it's ethical. And if you're going to implant more than one, then if you have twins or triplets, it means I'm committed to twins or triplets, is what that means. But limit, and so you need to find a clinic that's willing to do this, but limit it because of your pro-life convictions, and implant all the embryos that result from the process, and obviously keep all the ones that develop. That's one way. The second way is to prearrange the adoption of embryos. Here's what's remarkable, Josh, and I didn't realize this until recently. There are several, I know of at least 3, national embryo adoption organizations that have developed to help people with pro-life convictions. You all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I had to sneeze. I hope I pushed the mic out of the way fast enough so that they didn't hear my loud sneeze.
These embryo adoption organizations work with people who have embryos to supply and couples who need an embryo. And they literally adopt an embryo. It becomes theirs. There's an adoption process. They're implanted. So that's another way to ethically go through the IVF process. So it's legitimate. What a wonderful development of science for people who can't conceive naturally to be able to have a child, but to do it ethically, either only fertilize egg and sperm, or only fertilize eggs that are going to be implanted, or arrange for an embryo adoption.
Yeah.
Would be two ways.
Absolutely. Thank you for diving into this. Whoever submitted this question, thank you for
good question.
Asking this question is definitely very well thought through. And to everybody that submitted the question today, thank you so much for submitting that. We again, we say this every single week. We would not be able to do this if nobody submitted any questions. So we really appreciate that.
We would just think about that. Maybe we'll have a Josh and Dave chew the fat session one time. No questions. Maybe. We just whatever.
No questions. We'll literally just.
I'll ask you questions.
We'll read the entire genealogy, the first 9 chapters of First Chronicles.
Riveting podcast.
We'll see how many names we can butcher while reading all of First Chronicles, the first 9 chapters. So, as always, if you have any questions, it can be about previous messages. It can be about the message we had this past Sunday. It can be about what we talked about today here on the Q&A. It can literally be anything about the Bible. We want to be able to answer those questions for you. So you can go to My3C. At the very top, there's a submit a question thing. You can click on that. There's a text box where you can type in all your entire question or multiple questions if you have multiple. And it's completely anonymous. We have no idea who's submitting this, so you don't have to worry about any judgment or anything because we don't know who it is and we're not going to judge you anyways. But if you would like a personal answer back, if you're like, oh, hey, I have a question. I don't know exactly how to formulate what I'm thinking. You can put your name and your email on there and either myself or Dave will contact you and be like, hey, let's talk through this or let's go deeper because you might want to meet up and go get coffee and talk about it or something like that. You can put your email and your name on there so we can be able to reach back out to you. But, of course, you don't have to. It does not ask for that.
Yep.
So this is completely anonymous. So there's the submitted question. Also, deconstruction booklet. If you go to our website, it's still there. There's still daily devotionals every single day of the week and small group questions for reflection after and areas to put notes. If you don't have a physical copy, again, you can go to the website. You can click the More tab, scroll down, Deconstruction Part 2. You'll see it right there. I want to give a huge shout out to everybody who helped with Trunk or Treat.
Oh,
that was awesome. That was awesome. We were able to get to love on so many people within our community. So if you did a trunk, if you volunteered, or if you even just came, we're so glad that you came and participated and helped love on the community.
For sure. And Josh, if I can add real quick,
yes,
there's a relatively recent improvement to the Deconstruction 2 booklet on the website.
Oh, yeah?
Because Steve has now made it so that you can download it.
Oh.
And the nice thing about that is you can download it. You can have another PDF copy.
That's awesome.
You can print it off or do whatever you want to do with it. So it's it's more than just look at it online. You can now download a copy, share it, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, that's a huge one. That's a huge one. So, now you can download it, you can share it, and you can copy it, and you can print it, and you can write on it.
Absolutely.
There's so many things that you can do with it now. One last thing coming up very, very soon. Let's see. I got to look at the TV. You can't really see it all that well. But anyways, this is our invite to our women's conference. It's on November 11th. It's a Saturday. There are still spots. We still want ladies for you to sign up and come. It's going to be an absolutely great time. So you can grab this off of our Welcome Center in person, or you can go to our website. You can click our events tab and scroll down, and you will be able to see this to sign up for it. It is going to be great. There's a speaker named Shannon Popkin that is coming in. So I highly encourage ladies, if you haven't already, to sign up for that event. Dave, do you have anything else you want to say before we?
I think I'm good. Thanks, Josh.
Before we hopefully walk outside this door and one, make sure Perry's okay.
It's okay. Seriously.
And two, that the snow on the grass is melted. So
we'll see.
I'm hoping that's melted. I'm not ready for snow just yet. So, alrighty. Well, we're gonna go We're so glad that you guys joined us tonight for another installment of our Q&A. We hope to see you this Sunday, either in person at our 8:20, 9:40, or 11 o'clock service, or we hope that you join us for our live stream on 9:40 at our 9:40 service, which you can find on Facebook and YouTube. As always, after this is finished showing live, you can rewind it. You can go back. You can listen to it. It'll be on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts. There's multiple places that you can listen to it. You can share it. This is a great resource. We're so glad that we get to be able to do this for you guys. Mm-hmm. So until this upcoming Sunday or next Wednesday, we hope you guys have a great rest of your week. See ya.